All right, good afternoon. The reason why we're here, or the reason why I'm here, is that I wanted to talk to our staff about RNA program and also the changes that we have for the RNA program. We've also been having a lot of issues on residents not being assisted out of bed, and this is specifically for our new residents, our South Hall residents. And so I'll be going over some of those issues and how to intervene and what are some of the actions that we need to do to kind of fix those problems that we have. But first, let's take a look at the RNA changes that we have. Okay, as you know, RNA program is one of those specialized programs that we have for our long-term resident, but also we use it for weights for a lot of our new admits, a lot of our Medicare type of residents. You know, they have, or patients just in general who has a, CHF as a diagnosis. They need to be weighed on a daily basis. Okay. At the moment, or maybe a day ago, yesterday, we had close to 20 residents that had to be weighed daily. That itself is significant because I don't ever remember having up to 20 residents and weighing 20 residents every day just because they have a specific diagnosis. And in fact, having 20 residents weighed daily has given us so much work that we have been faced with different problems, from therapy to dietary to obviously to nursing, because of the weight issue that has been changing significantly. The other issue is that we have scale issue. Sometimes the scale is giving us different weight. And so some of the recommendations that our nurses has been telling us and having these meetings almost daily, trying to solve our problems with weights is that, and I think they're good ones too. We're working on trying to get a new scale, but obviously the scales is gonna cost us in the thousands, and I'm not talking $2,000-3,000. I'm talking $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. And the weight scale that we have right now is about $2,000, and we're trying to work our way up. Okay, I know that there's some issues with the scale, but it gets calibrated every 3 months or so, and I feel as though we can work around those issues. And some of the solutions that our nurses has been coming up with is that maybe put a weight on there on a daily basis, right? For example, if you weigh 180 pounds, right? And that could be a weight that you could basically gauge the scale, right? If you're 180 pounds yesterday, you should be 180 pounds today. And if you're 200 pounds today, obviously the weight, the scale needs to be calibrated. And so that's one way to really try to figure out, try to gauge the scale to make sure if it's working correctly or not, right? Trying to self-calibrate before you even use it to weigh your residents. Or you can use a simple, like 50-pound weight scale. I think I'm gonna bring one in from home, and we're gonna use that as a calibration weight, okay? And that's one way to really kind of mitigate some of these issues that we have. The other way, and which we've already implemented, is having a specific wheelchair that is designed as an RNA for weighing residents. And I went ahead and labeled the wheelchair today. It's stationed over at the where the old weight scale is at. That was broken, so we're using that as a storage space. So if you're an RNA, if you need to weigh your resident, make sure that you're using these wheelchair. Weigh the wheelchair first every day. Get the weight of the wheelchair, put your resident and minus it out, okay? So that way you have a nice wheelchair that's constant. You know that wheelchair is 50 pounds, right? You weighed it one time before you started your shift. It's 50 pounds. You bring in a new resident every single time you weigh your resident. So that's one less factor that would contribute to making your weight a little different, right? Is having a wheelchair that's designed for weighing resident. It's the same weight that you're dealing with. You're not having to deal with different type of wheelchair and different scale. That's available now, as I mentioned. And so please use that tactic to kind of try to help you out with your weight. Okay. Um, Also, if you're working with 15 to 20 resident and you're trying to weigh these resident within 1.5 hour time frame, it's gonna be very, very difficult. I'm not gonna lie to you, okay? And some of you guys, most of you RNA know that. You know the amount of work that you have to put in. You know, when you have 20 resident, you have to weigh within 1.5 hours. It's really, really important that you need to communicate with each one of those CNA that is listed, you know, as their resident, or you know, as a CNA for those resident. So for example, if you in the South Hall you have a CNA that's assigned to room 3 and 4, and those are the rooms that you need to get weight for, you might want to communicate with that CNA, tell them, hey, once you get your resident dressed, please call me in the radio, let me know that they're ready so I can pick them up and weigh them. Or the CNA themselves can help you out by bringing the resident over to the weight scale. Okay, maybe help you transfer into the different wheelchair. But communication, as you can see, is going to be really important if we're trying to accomplish something as big as what we have now in terms of 20 residents being weighed on a daily basis. Okay, so communication, please, that's really important. Okay. Before you start your shift, also please make sure that you're looking at each of these residents, what their weight was yesterday or the day before, or maybe even just getting the last couple of days weight. That's really going to help you because it gives you a number to work with. If you know that the patient's 118 pounds and they're 119 today or 118, then you know that that's a good weight, right? There isn't a significant change there. But if you don't know that, then the patient might weigh 130 today, and then she weighed 118 yesterday, and you're not gonna see that as an error, basically, right? And so you're gonna move on by inputting 130 pounds, and that's gonna send a signal to our team, basically, this patient gained 10 pounds in one day, 24 hours. I mean, that's a medical emergency in itself right there. But we need to factor in that there's errors in here, right? There's wheelchairs that are miscalculated. There are maybe leg rest that wasn't there, or there may be a brace that was added on. You know, whatever the case may be, right? We need to add a number from the previous days, okay? A trend of somehow, okay? Because likely a resident who has a change in condition is gaining or losing weight, they're gonna do so in an incremental manner, in a very small amount, right? 1 or 2 pounds, half a pound. Within a period of 1 week, they've gained 2 or 3 pounds. That's pretty significant. 5 pounds in one day is pretty crazy. And like I said, if somebody has CHF, that is a medical emergency. You need to call the doctor, get orders, all of that. Okay. So make sure that we are following through on those important steps to prevent an error on our end. Okay, those are mechanical errors. I think, as far as I'm concerned, is that those are things that we can fix and figure out on our own. Also, there's I want to address the issue with our CNA, specifically in the South Hall, not getting up our resident. And I think it's important to kind of remember that every single resident here is important. Okay, here at Seacrest, everyone is important. We treat every single resident in the same respect as another resident that's coming in. A new resident, whether you're a new resident or old resident, been here for a while, we're gonna respect you the same way as everybody, right? But it's a big one, right? The South Hall, which is the new admit residents, we do need to put a focus on those residents in terms of trying to get them up, okay? Is because they're here for an acute period of time. They're here, they're new admit, they have an acute diagnosis, and it's important that they get up because they have therapy that they need to be doing, right? We need to weigh these residents. On top of that, they had a significant change in their physical abilities and they do need to get up, and keeping them in bed is just going to make them weaker, basically. All right. And part of the issue is, I think, is we need to understand that. We need to understand that the South Hall, the new admit resident, they do need to get up. Now, these residents, they do have options not to get up, but it takes teaching and being firm with this resident, make them understand that they're here for a reason. A lot of times I think they feel like, hey, I'm here, when therapy gets here, I'll deal with the therapy. But part of the therapy really starts when you come in, right, as a CNA. You get them dressed, you get them, you get their range of motion going. They need to get up at a certain time so that way they can join other resident for breakfast. That's really helpful. Just getting them up builds their strength in terms of breathing, right? Keeping them in bed increases their risk for aspiration. Not only that, they don't get the benefits of, that breathing ability when you're sitting up, right? It helps you, right? And also when therapy comes in, they're nice and ready already, right? And therapy has a significant amount of work that they need to do. And when residents are up like that, it just helps them. And they know that we're following MD orders as well and trying to get these residents up in the morning. But these residents can be very difficult in trying to get them up. And so there's a certain way to kind of talk to these residents. And maybe it's our fault too as nurses, is that we're not teaching our CNAs, our new CNAs, that when we're communicating with a resident, we need to be firm. And if we tell a resident, hey, Mrs. Smith, we're gonna have to get you up, it's 6:30, I'm gonna have you sit up, therapy's gonna be here. We're telling them that you had therapy, we're telling them we need to get you weight. They're still saying no, right? And you feel like, hey, that's all I can do, right? But in reality, we gotta be more firm than that, right? Not really yelling at resident, we don't be yelling at resident, but you do need to be firm with your resident and trying to educate your resident, right? Part of nursing is really educating people, educating your resident, educating family members. So when resident says no, we have to come back to them and say, hey, you know what, Mr. Smith, I do have to get you up. I have a doctor's order to get you up. When you get up, you get stronger. Don't you want to go home, right? Do you want to be here with us, for, 6 more months or 1 more year? Okay, because I want to get you stronger, but in order for me to do that, I got to get you up every day to get you rehab. Sitting up in your chair actually helps you get stronger, right? So you can tell them that, hey, you know what, it's a doctor's order, it's a therapy order, that we need you to be getting you up, and sitting in your bed doesn't help you up, doesn't get you stronger, and I guarantee you, you're gonna be staying here longer with us in skilled nursing and not going home in time if you don't get up. Stay in bed, will increase your risk for infection, will make your lungs weaker, right? So we want to make sure that we bring it back to them and make them accountable, these residents, make them feel kind of, oh, yeah, I feel bad that I'm not getting up because, yeah, these nurses are doing their job. They want to get me out of here, and if you want to get out of here, you got to get up early. We got to do your therapy. We got to get you weight. You got to go join us in a dining room. And there's so much benefits in getting up, just taking your meds alone when you're up is beneficial because you're not laying down, right? And all these breathing and movement is different when you're up than when you're laying down. So in any case, just having that knowledge, just having that understanding that new admit, new residents, they need to be up more so than your long-term resident, right? Your long-term resident, we encourage them to be up as well, but we know more about them than the new resident, right? These residents, the new ones, has had a change in conditions. They recently fell, they had a pneumonia, whatever, they have an infection, okay? And in order for them to be at baseline physically, they gotta get up, okay? They gotta spend more time sitting up than laying down. Okay, so the RNAs has to do their due diligence as well, right? RNA can help out new CNAs by encouraging residents to get up. A lot of your new CNAs, they're not gonna necessarily have that, they're not gonna be as brave as you, right? In communicating with our residents and trying to get residents to say, oh yeah, I do wanna get up.